are live.
We're live.
Hello, everyone. Jonathan Enders, Russell Fawcett here again with Stern Insight. And past couple of weeks, we've done inventory, and then last week we did renting versus owning. So we're kind of doing something different this week. It's going to be a little bit more light, a little bit more fun on terms of living in Salt Lake City, what we like about it, what are the benefits. Russell, you lived in Colorado, Wisconsin, other places. I'm from Wisconsin. I lived in Denver as well, and just kind of sharing what we love and what we like about Salt Lake City. So Russ, start off. What was the reason that you moved to Salt Lake City, and what keeps you here besides the job and lifestyle?
No, so my family actually moved here my senior year. So I originally grew up in Colorado. As you said, I lived in Idaho for junior high school. I was out in Wisconsin. And then my parents moved up to Cache Valley, so the Logan area, my senior year of high school. And so then I came after I graduated. I went and I served a church mission. I actually lived in Spain for a couple of years.
That's not bad.
And then I came back and went to school at BYU. And honestly, like, Utah has everything that I love to do. And so there really was no reason to really look anywhere else, because outside of family, I can also do everything that I like to do right here in the state.
So what are those things you like to do outside of like work and that Utah presents and has to offer? Because probably why a lot of people are actually moving to Utah as well.
Yep. I mean, outdoors. That is, like, for me, and it's funny because I've chased over the years, I've kind of chased a couple things, being like, I like the idea of this, or I think I would like this. And ultimately it comes down to, I like to go hike. I like to go sit by the side of a lake and just
think about
just think or not think, right? Like sometimes I just like to go and watch the squirrels run around. Like, and I think what I really like about Utah though is you can, I mean, yes, right here up close, trails can be busy, but if you're willing to go on like a 2-3 hour hike, like you can literally be, by yourself out in the mountains
and isolate yourself pretty much.
And then the other thing, so our family, every single year, like we take 2 lake trips. And so we go down, and I know we end up actually being in Arizona for part of it, but we go down to Lake Powell.
Nice.
So warm water. It's obviously been low the last couple of years, but we love that trip. And then we love to go to Bear Lake. Now that's cold water, but it still gives me that, like, my kids can play in the sand. It gives us that beach feel, because if you go to the right spots, you can actually play in the sand as well and build sand castles. And
well, in the summertime, that cold water may be a little bit refreshing as well.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah, the proximity for me, at least, because I lived in Denver. I remember I used to have to wake up at 4:30 in the morning, drive an hour and a half just to beat rush hour traffic. If you leave just a half hour or 45 minutes late, you're going to pick up another hour of traffic. And when I moved here the first time, I woke up at the same time anticipating, like, all right, I got to drive a long distance, and pulled up all the trails. The next thing you know, it's like 20 minutes. I said, well, I guess I'm going to see a sunrise today at least. So.
Yeah. So that was when we lived in down in Cedar Hills. So that's northern Utah County, kind of on the mountainside. We still do it, but we had a pass up American Fork Canyon. And I remember, like, Thursday in work was usually, that was kind of when it slowed down, because, essentially we worked all week to get ready for showings on the weekend. We worked the weekend, and then, Monday, Tuesday were crazy. And by Thursday, that was my slow day. So I'd usually leave, a little bit earlier, and we were up having, essentially dinner in the mountains within 10 minutes. Like, it literally was just around the corner and you were in the mountains.
And I think a lot of people appreciate that, especially if they come from areas where, Los Angeles, Denver, Sacramento, all those places where you got to drive a long distance. Being here in Utah, for me, my lifestyle, it's awesome because it's the same thing that you do.
Yeah. And the other thing, like, I mean, for me, right, I have 3 kids, and a lot of the restaurants. So, I know maybe we don't have quite the food scene or the bar scene in some of the other places that you might go. But for me, being able to take my family out and feel comfortable with my family, And so, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of restaurants, there's plenty of good food still, that I think, I mean, again, I got married while I was in college, so I will, never experienced kind of the nightlife or craved having that. But as far as raising a family, it's been amazing for us.
That's awesome. And it's just Utah has it's a big city, but it's a small city at the same time. I've seen New York City, lived in Denver, and for me, coming from a town of 700, it's just really nice it's a big city, has all the amenities, whatever you want to do, but it's still a small, big city.
Yep. Well, and so kind of to touch on that, like obviously I've, been to different cities, I've traveled. One of the things that I've learned or noticed about Salt Lake is like we really don't have what I would consider the dangerous ghetto. Like there is nowhere that I would be afraid to walk in the streets in the evening. And I've been like, I still remember being in St. Louis riding with someone, and we went and we turned down the wrong street, and he's like, "Oh shoot, guys, you guys need to duck and hide while I turn around." And it just made me really grateful to think about, like, there's nowhere in Utah that I would drive that I would be, one, fear for my life, but think I need to hide, right? Like yes, there are places that cost more money, but as far as like the people go, like everyone to me, like I don't feel threatened anywhere. And again, that's important to me. I don't want to have to be like picking my schedule or driving as a real estate agent, right? Exactly. Like I don't want to be afraid to go into a neighborhood, and we don't have that. Like there's not a single place that I would be afraid to go to.
I probably subconsciously thought it, but you hit it right on the head. That's a really, really safe city, because like I went to Milwaukee plenty of times, and you drive right through the stoplights because you don't want to take a chance or anything like certain areas. What are some of the Salt Lake cultures and lifestyles that you enjoy the most at Salt Lake, besides like the hiking? You mentioned restaurants. Is there anything else that you find that's really, really cool, unique about Salt Lake, and it's just overall lifestyle?
I think there's a lot of things, and it really depends. Like, so depending on who you talk to, right, they're going to have different things. Like obviously the wintertime, skiing or snowmobiling, whichever, snowboarding. I mean, we have world-class resorts here, right? People fly in. It amazes me that when I'll go to travel, the amount of people that are flying in with skis, and it's like, I think I take that for granted that like there's all these resorts that I can get to in 20 to 30 minutes or whatever it is. The snowmobiling, like I said, is just amazing. But then we have also like the sports scene, the Utah Jazz. Like as far as the fan base goes, like that atmosphere it's
electric.
So cool, right? And I think we don't have, like, even this year when we were in a down year, like it was still crazy. Like people still went. We have Real, the soccer team, like those games, people are passionate about it. You go to the University of Utah and BYU, that rivalry is a fun, passionate rivalry. And so me growing up having played sports, like I can still essentially get that sports fix. And I like that there are these rivalries, in-state rivalries. Being in Wisconsin, I had a lot of buddies that were, either Duke or North Carolina fans. And so I grew up I was never part of that rivalry, but we saw it, amongst our friends. And then getting here and having that BYU-Utah rivalry, like it's fun. And where I went to BYU, I get to be a part of that and continue to be a part of that even post-college. Those are, and then again, I think the community activities, right? Like we just had Easter. How many Easter egg hunts were there?
Oh, every park I went to that Easter weekend with my dog, it was eggshells everywhere.
Right. So I think there's a lot of family things that you can do, but you can also get out. Like even, I know a lot of people come here to hike, to golfing. That's another one for me. Like the courses are completely affordable. I went in California and it was like, oh man, like it was crazy how expensive it was for just a public course. And so here, being able to play around a golf affordably, renting some type of recreational vehicle. So I guess just things like that. Like, I think we have access to, like you said, almost everything that a big city does. But we have more of the smaller town lifestyle.
It's like a little bit of a rural feel
Right.
to it.
And if you want to go rural, I mean, you're an hour and you can be out like
In Park City and that.
well, you can be in Park City, or if you want to be out in the desert, right? Like
That's
you
true,
can, you can get away. Like, we have an agent on our team, a couple agents that do horses. One of them shows horses, another one does rodeos, right? So you can still get into some of that stuff. I still go to a demolition derby every single year, right? So we have some of the things that I grew up doing that were small town
The
that,
small town
that I can
activity.
still do.
And that's kind of nice. It helps, at least for me and you and probably other people as well, just be able to, reminisce and get back and connect it to your roots in that.
And so with that as well, like, I think it's cool that all of the towns still do their like
Yearly
still days and an American Fork, or you have Pioneer Days. So like they still tie into their small town roots. Even as we've grown, they've still kept those same activities that I can now do with my family that I did as a kid and that I looked forward to, right? They still have their little kid games and things like that.
You said something there that kind of, as you said, the towns are still able to do their activities as the city has grown.
Yep.
In your perspective, because you've been here a lot longer than I have, how much has the city grown, and have you seen it change anything the Wasatch from?
Traffic.
No,
it's so I remember. So again, I used to live my family's originally from Colorado, and then we moved to Idaho. And so this is when I was 12, 13 years old, 14. So every year we'd still take a trip to Colorado from Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would drive that I-15 stretch. And I remember when we would drive, we'd always look for the Delta Center. Yep. And they went back to the Delta Center, right? That's where the Jazz came. Like, I always wanted to see the Delta Center. It was so cool to be able to see that from the freeway. And then we would drive and we would pass Lehigh. And I don't know if you knew it or not, but the movie Footloose was recorded there.
That was before my time.
And so the flour mills in Footloose were the Lehigh roller mills. And you could also see those from the freeway. And so
that's cool.
So like we would pick out these like different things when we were driving, right? And now, I mean, it's completely changed as far as you wouldn't be able to see like that stuff from the freeway. Where I live right around Point of the Mountain, for the longest time, the only thing that was there was a Chevron with an iceberg hamburger place. Like that was the only thing at Point of the Mountain. So now you go there and I mean, there are corporate buildings, Adobe's got their corporate building there. The first thing that came in was Cabela's, and then it was Maverick, and then it just exploded. Like it was just, a bunch of, corporations, business buildings and different things. So I think that is like, definitely we have more people, we have more growth, but that's provided more jobs, more opportunity for even me, as an individual working now. It's not like we had to move away, because that's why my parents ultimately moved away from where they grew up, is because we're in such a small town in Colorado that there wasn't opportunity. So if you weren't a farmer, you essentially had to move away, right, to be able to get a job. And so for me, that it's increased the opportunity. There's definitely more things to do now, right? Like there's now the movie theaters and just all the different stuff that continues to pop up that you can do. You can still escape to the outdoors, which we always had, but now you can also, if you want some of the city entertainment, that's here as well.
Yeah, you hit movies, and I can't believe I didn't ask about, because I mean, Park City with Sundance right there. I mean, I grew up dreaming about, hey, I'm gonna go check out Sundance and stuff, and it's everything's here and stuff. It's truly a unique city.
Yep.
Now, kind of changing a little bit, what challenges did you face when you moved here, in difference of lifestyles and stuff like that, compared to Wisconsin versus here? Like for me personally, it was one of the big surprises, not a huge issue or anything. It's like in Wisconsin, we have like liquor stores everywhere. And then here, I remember I was like, you know what, I want to, Friday night or Saturday afternoon, just relax and stuff. And it's like, oh, I have to go to this place to get it. Whereas every gas station, convenience store, anything would have alcohol served there.
Well, that's where you go from, the University of Wisconsin being the party school of the nation to BYU continually being ranked, what is it, like stone cold school of the nation, right? Like, so, I guess on that, like, honestly, so, I mean, just to share, I guess, I am LDS. And so even the places that I live, like in Colorado and Idaho, essentially they were still predominantly LDS. So I've lived in those. Now we go to Wisconsin, right? That's completely different. And so even there though, like even in Wisconsin, there was still a lot of conservative, like it was still very family oriented. Yeah. Right. Like we still had, because my family, like I said, they moved here my senior year and I lived with another family and we still had Sunday dinner. Right. We still sat down as, even though I lived with him, we still sat down together and had dinner together. So for me, like, as far as culturally, I wouldn't say that there was a lot. If I would say what I miss is access to lakes. So
being able to just drive 10 minutes and you're on a lake.
And so again, we still have great, again, we have Bear Lake, we have Pineview Reservoir, Strawberry. There's definitely still lakes and you can still recreate.
But it's not the same.
But going across the road and getting in the paddle boat or jumping on a pontoon, we don't have, like, one of my favorite things to do in high school was actually, and this is kind of taken away from Utah, I guess, but it was to drive up on a pontoon and get your cheese curds and your Coke, right? And then go back on the lake, like to be able to actually drive up to the restaurant. So I do miss that. And then I was just actually this last week in Tennessee. I actually like a little bit of humidity and it's fairly dry. And there's a lot of people that like would prefer I definitely prefer dry heat, but this time of the year, I like it when there's
that little bit of humidity, so you're not putting lotion on 5 times a day to keep your
sinus from cracking. Your sinuses aren't getting just completely dried up, right? So I miss a little bit of the kind of that canopy cover that they have in Wisconsin as well, with all the all the greens and things like that. But outside of those, like, again, we have access to anything that I've wanted to do. I have access to it.
That's awesome. I know we're coming up on time a little bit, so one of my final questions: how do you see Salt Lake evolving, growing in the future, and how do you see it playing a factor in like the region itself, the entire Western region?
Yep. So I mean, we've been just year after year, we continue to be one of the top states that are friendly for business, right? So we do see that, and our leaders have been some of the honestly, I think some of the best fiscally sound leaders of the nation. And so we've continued to grow. And so I do think we're going to continue to see corporations moving here. I think as well, as we look at maybe some of the challenges, especially here at the Wasatch Front, we essentially have mountains on both sides, right? Yep. So eventually we are going to run out of room to build. And even going on the other side of the mountain, to like Tooele, if you head out west, we run into water issues. And so I do think one of our biggest things that we're going to have to figure out moving forward is, kind of that affordability. And one of the things that we don't have a lot of yet are the, like, just tons and tons of large apartment complexes.
Vertical ones.
Vertical. And so I do think at some point that the city will have to start kind of opening up a little bit more some of the regulations to allow us to go vertical, to allow us to build some essentially more condensed housing so that we can tackle affordability. Because that is my biggest fear, is that the affordability of Salt Lake will continue to just climb that chart of not being affordable. I just saw a thing, I think a news story, that we were the 10th hardest state for first-time homebuyers. And that was a number just like 4 years ago that we were like I mean, we're one of the friendliest places for first-time home buyers, and it is because we are attracting, essentially that level of talent and, these high-paying jobs. We've taken a lot from California and brought them here. Our affordability, or at least the cost of a home, like I would say the cost to recreate and the cost to live is still relatively low compared to other states, but our cost of homes have went up. And so we do need to be conscious on our long-term planning of how we're going to plan out to have affordable housing.
And that's one thing that, because I moved to Denver before it blew up and everything, and within the 5 years I lived there, everything just didn't grow horizontally. It grew vertically.
Yep.
And more people were able to come down, enjoy the city, enjoy the state as well.
Yep. Yeah, and you're seeing that. I mean, we are building more and more kind of those work, live, walk communities where you can literally come out of your house, walk down to get something to eat, walk down to the movies. And so I think the cities have been very, conscious of making sure as they continue to build that they're providing those types of amenities for people so they actually enjoy where they're living.
Those 15-minute communities.
Yep.
I know they're really big in Europe and stuff, and it's that I personally would love to be in one of those areas around, because that way I don't have to worry about anything. And the final kind of question, it kind of continues on with how Salt Lake is growing as a city in the region itself. What recommendations would you have for someone who is actually thinking about moving to Salt Lake City or thinking about making a move out west here, and if they should choose Salt Lake or somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, again, our low crime rates, great job opportunities. It is a good place, whether you want to go downtown to be entertained or whether you want to escape to the mountains. Like, I really do think, and I don't necessarily want to lobby for a bunch of people to come here, right? Because we're all selfish and we want it to ourselves. But it definitely is one of those places that we're going to continue to grow. I feel like we have a good mix of industry as well. We have oil, we have the refineries, we have corporate, but we also still have farming and agriculture.
Yep.
And so they're really, no matter essentially what your passion in work is, you'll probably be able to find a good job, and you'll be able to make enough to be able to afford to have lifestyle as well. So I think that's important.
Oh, it totally is. And you definitely, to hit on your point, not everyone moving here, because that's kind of what we're in Denver in a way,
right?
Everyone. But one benefit that I always tell people that Salt Lake has that Denver never had, when the Olympics were here, I mean, you guys redid the entire infrastructure.
Right.
I mean, State Street would be like the number 2 highway in Denver. We're here, it's a little bit lower and stuff, and just the infrastructure can handle everything. So,
yep.
We're coming up in time. Do you have any last things that you would love to say about Salt Lake City, living here? Final words?
No, I think it's one of those places that for me, like, especially when buying a home, right? So we're real estate agents and have the real estate team. Like, for me, I know there's always going to be value in what I own. And so I like that. I know a lot of people are starting to invest outside of Utah because it's like, okay, we want to go buy that home that is only $60,000 or $100,000. And I think that's fine. But there's also a reason why our values went up. And because I do think there is value in holding those, right? And so I also, when the homes that I do have tenants in, like, I know that, like, they're going to hold their value and continue to help me increase, as far as my net worth and some of my financial goals. And I like that because I can essentially say, no, I can bank that these homes are going to continue to appreciate. And again, that's how I'm looking to build wealth. And so for me, I essentially can build wealth and lifestyle all in my backyard. And that's important to me.
It's a beautiful city and a beautiful area to do it. So.
Yep.
Well, that's everything for today. If you guys have any suggestions or things that you guys would like us to cover and talk about, definitely let us know. Next week we will have a special guest, and we're going to be going over interest rates and the impact of interest rates in today's market.
Awesome.
Thanks everyone for joining. You guys have yourself a terrific rest of your Thursday.
Thank you.